Hey there, this is R A Manard, Mitrava for Monks of the Way, and this is the October 30th Truth Talk. And so what we've got today is a little something called the regretful bandit. That's what I've translated the name as. Others have translated it the penitent thief, but in any case, it has the name that it has in Pali, of course, which sutta it is. And instead of waiting for people to join up, I'm going to go ahead and get started. It's once again the regretful bandit, and it seems like a simple story, and maybe it has a moral, but it's actually pretty involved in a couple of places. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. The regretful bandit and Angulimala Sutta would be what it's called. This is what I've heard. In one season, the Blessed One was staying at Savatthi in the Conqueror's Grove, the cloister garden and feeder of the poor. In that season, there was a bandit named Finger Garland in the land of Pasanadi. The self-proclaimed king of Kosala, that sometimes called himself the Beast, was like a barbarian, red-handed, an artist of killing and slaughter. Unmerciful to all that live, by him towns, villages, and entire districts were so destroyed that it was as if they had never been there. He slew men all the time, and he wore a decoration called a garland of fingers around his neck. Not exactly a sweetheart, huh? Now the Blessed One, having dressed to go out, put his bowl in his robe and went to Savatthi to go about the activities of collecting alms, collecting donations, that is. And he finished his rounds there in town and decided to return from his efforts that afternoon. He rolled up his mat, put his bowl in his robe, and set out on the high road where Finger Garland the bandit was. The herdsmen, the cattle tenders, the farmers who were working saw the Blessed One going that way and called out to him urgently. Philosopher, don't go on that road. A robber named Finger Garland is down that way, who's like a barbarian, red-handed, devoted to killing and slaughter, and merciful to all that live. By him, towns, villages, and entire districts are made as though they've never been. He slays men all the time, wears a garland of their fingers. Oh, philosopher, men go down that road only in groups of 10, 20, 30, or 40, and they go armed in fear of Finger Garland the bandit. Well, when they'd said this, the Blessed One just kept going on his way in silence. And the second and the third time, they continued warning him, but he still went on his way. Silence. Now, Finger Garland the bandit saw the Blessed One coming from far away, and having seen him, he thought to himself, now this is astonishing. This is great. This is marvelous. Men go on this road only in groups of 10, 20, 30, or 40, and they go armed in fear of me. But this philosopher, it seems, is alone, without anyone, open to attack. Should I kill this philosopher? Then Finger Garland the bandit took his sword and his shield, got bow and quiver ready, and came up behind and jumped the Blessed One. But the Blessed One put forth such an effort of physical power that Finger Garland the bandit, using all of his strength, could not stop the Blessed One going by his inner force. So he just kept right on walking. Well, this made the robber think to himself, well, this is astonishing. This is marvelous. It's as if I've chased and tried to grab onto an elephant while it's running, a horse, a chariot. And now, using all my strength, I can't stop this philosopher going by his inner force. So he stood there and he said to the Blessed One, stop, stop, philosopher, stop, stop. And Buddha says, I'm standing, finger garland, and I want you to stand up also. Well, then Finger Garland the bandit thinks to himself, well, these philosophers tell the truth, they keep their promises, and this guy, even while he's walking, says, I'm standing, Finger Garland, and I want you to stand also? Should I ask him what he means? Then the bandit asked him. He says, well, philosopher, you say I'm standing while you're walking, and you say to me that I'm not standing, but I am standing right here. So how is it that you're standing and I'm not? So Buddha says to him, I'm standing, Finger Garland, eternal with all beings, having laid aside any weapon or violence, while you are fleeting and violent among living things. That's how I'm standing and you're not. So Finger Garland said, for so long I heard about this great seer, this philosopher debating in the woods, in the great wood, and always wondered if this guy was real. He says, I'll renounce violence going forward, having heard your words that are rational to me and in line with my beliefs. Buddha said, in this way, a bandit resembles a sword or a weapon at the pit, at the edge of a realm of damnation and suffering. The bandit bowed at the feet of the enlightened one with the strength of the universe and begged to be ordained on the spot. Then Buddha, the compassionate seer, who is master of the world with its angels, it says, maybe that needs to be retranslated, said to him, come with me. And that's it. He was a monk. But the story doesn't end quite there. So apparently Finger Garland is pretty darn impressed with Buddha. The story continues. Now the Blessed One, with Finger Garland for an attendant philosopher, went on his journey towards Savatthi, and in due time arrived there. The Blessed One stayed at Savatthi, the Conqueror's Grove, cloistered garden of the feeder of the poor. Quite a name, don't say that 5 times fast. Now in that season, a great crowd gathered regularly at the palace gate of Pasenadi, the king of Kosala, and they yelled, Your Majesty, there's a bandit in your realm named Finger Garland, who's a barbarian, red-handed, devoted to killing and slaughter, unmerciful to all who live. By him, towns, villages, and districts are made as though they had never been. He slays men all the time and wears a garland of their fingers. Please, Majesty, arrest him. Now the king of Kosala departed that day from Savatthi with 500 horses and proceeded to the cloister garden. He went by chariot as far as the ground was passable for chariots, and then got off and went on foot there to the Blessed One. Going up to the Blessed One, he saluted him and sat respectfully to one side. That, of course, was the custom. This was the respectful tradition. While he sat there, the Blessed One said to him, O great king, has Sineo Bimbisaro, the king of Magadha, started violence with you or this other clan or rival kings? And he said, no, none of these kings have started violence with me. But there's in my realm a bandit called Finger Garland, who's a barbarian, red-handed, devoted to killing and slaughter, unmerciful to all who live. By him, towns, villages, and districts are made as though they've never been. Slays men all the time. Where's garland of fingers? And the king even adds, I fear I will not be able to arrest him. So, Buddha says, but, great king, if you saw Finger Garland, and his hair and his beard were shaved off, he had put on yellow robes, had given up the life of home ownership to be homeless, abstaining from taking life, from theft, from lying. If he ate one meal a day, was chaste, moral, with a glorious practice of religion, what would you do to him? He said, well, we would salute him respectfully, or rise in his presence, or offer him a seat, or present him with a robe and bowl, a place to stay, and he needed components, medicine, conveniences. We would provide for him the protection, tolerance, and defense that are due to those of religion. He says, but how could there be such a moral restraint in such an immoral and a wicked person like that? Now, that's a pretty good question, right? Now, at that time, the man of deeply respected character, known before as Finger Garland, was sitting not far from the Blessed One. Then the Blessed One, stretching out his right arm, said to the king, this great king is Finger Garland. Well, then the king was seized with fear, distress, horror. And the Blessed One, seeing him, said not to be afraid, agitated. He said, don't be afraid. He said, there's nothing to fear anymore. The king, who had been terrified, calmed down again and went up to Finger Garland, saying to him, surely one of your reverence is not Finger Garland, right? But he said to him, yes, I am. So then he questioned him. He says, well, what's the clan then of someone like yourself, humble and respectful? Who's your father, and what clan is your mother? And he answered truthfully, great king, my father is Gagyo, and my mother is Mantani, I believe is how you pronounce it. If it pleases you, reverend son of so and so forth, I will supply you with a robe and bowl, with a mat to sit and sleep on, with the requirements of medicine and convenience. But at that time, the person of respected, revered character, Finger Garland, was a forest dweller. And he had a bowl. He was wearing 3 robes made from cloth that they found in trash piles. And so he said, that's okay. 3 robes is all I need. So that was that, I suppose. Then the king of Kosala approached the Blessed One, saluted him respectfully, and sat on one side. And sitting there, the king said to the Blessed One, astonishing, marvelous, O Lord, you continue to tame men that are the untamed, pacify those that are unpacified, and among those who could not attain, they are brought to the happiness of understanding. Let's see. He said, he, Lord, whom no one could tame by staff or sword, is tamed by the Blessed One, without staff, without a sword. But now, Lord, we must go because we have much to do and much business currently to pursue. And Buddha says, as you wish, great king, and there he goes. So, The king of Kasala got up, saluted the Blessed One respectfully, and left from the gathering of many monks, keeping him on his right side, as was the tradition. So then the story goes a little further. So then the man of deeply respected character, Finger Garland, having dressed to go out, put his bowl in his robe and went into Svati to perform the duties of collecting donations. When he went through Savati from house to house for donations and performing his duties, he saw a woman in the agonies of birthing pains. When he saw this, he thought to himself, such is life, and how beings suffer. Such is life, how beings suffer. So now the deeply respected Finger Garland, having gone to Savati to perform the collection duties, returned in the afternoon. He approached the Blessed One, saluted him, and sitting as usual, said, today in my begging rounds, I went from house to house. I saw a woman who was giving birth. She was alone. I wanted to help her, but who would ever accept help from Finger Garland, the killer? He says, I thought to myself, such is life, how beings suffer. Such is life, how beings suffer. Well, now, Finger Garland, Buddha says to him, he says, go back. He says, go offer your help and say, since I was born, sister, I do not remember that I ever purposely took the life of anything that breathes. By this truth, there'll be safety for you and for your womb. He says to him, well, that'll surely be a deliberate lie. I mean, many breathing things have been made lifeless by me. But Buddha answers him, well then, Finger Garland, go back there and offer your help and tell her, sister, since I was born of the noble birth, I do not remember that I ever intended to take the life of anything that breathes. By this truth, there'll be safety for you and for your womb. And the guy says, as you say, Lord, and he heads out. He was in agreement, and he went back, and he offered his help, and he said that, and then there was safety. And from then on, the man of revered character, Finger Garland, living alone, retired, in earnest, enthusiastic, and relentless, in such a short time, had been transformed by his own immortal realization. And that was all in this world for him. And that incomparable goal of the religious life was attained for its own sake. For its own sake, do authentic people go forth from life of home ownership into the homeless one. He perceived that birth was destroyed, their religious life was being lived, duty undertaken, and for this earthly existence there was nothing beyond. And so the man of deeply respected character, Finger Garland, became a person with the bliss of clear understanding. Not much left to the story, but it continues. Now the man of deeply respected character, Finger Garland, having dressed to travel, put his bowl in his robe, went out to do his duties of collecting donations. And on one such occasion, a clod of earth was thrown and hit him. On another, it was a stick. On another, it was a stone. So then the man of deeply respected character, Finger Garland, with his head wounded and blood flowing, his bowl broken, and his robe torn even, approached the Blessed One. And the Blessed One saw him coming from far away. And he yells to him, stand up, Holy man, stand up. When he got closer, he added, you're feeling in this world the effect of some deed for which you would have been tormented by damnation for many years, maybe even for many hundreds or thousands of years. Then the man of deeply respected character, Finger Garland, went to a place serene and solitary, felt the bliss of deliverance, and was overheard at that time. He was speaking the truth of it loudly to himself. He says, to a person with the bliss of clear understanding, all the past is wiped away, and that person just owns up and suffers such physical effects of evil like this. Any retribution, then having been completely used up, can never follow that person beyond the grave. The end. So I wanted to go through the whole thing, but there's certainly some interesting parts in here that deserve to be talked about. First of all, we find that that Finger Garland has never met anybody like Buddha before. Obviously, he's so impressed. Obviously, the argument that he makes that basically that he's living wrong, and the demonstration that there's more strength to be had. Then there's the other part that's worth mentioning where he mentions not just being born, but the concept of being born again, being born of the noble birth. So, before anybody else in the world was talking about being born again, Buddha was already talking about it. And this birth that he's talking about is having a realization and deciding to be a monk. That's the birth, the start of a new life. Obviously, it's a pretty striking concept, and it did catch on, and in more than one religion. But people don't very often attribute it to Buddha, rightfully. And then at the end, we should mention that Buddha's mentioning that even though you've been reborn into this new life, that your karma is going to follow you, that you're still going to suffer the effects of things that you've done. So it does not wipe the slate clean yet. But he says if you own up to it and you live rightfully, that you can overcome this. You can exhaust it. Once exhausted, it's gone. Even saying that it can't follow you beyond the grave, which is a little bit different than other teachings where he mentions that, even that normally it would follow you beyond the grave, even that being the kind of person that's done these things, that these things follow you. So we have in this one particular sutta talk of realization, transformation, and reality testing a person. Not necessarily a particular person or people, but the universe basically testing your resolve and giving that result of karma to you still, so that you can exhaust it. And I think the story is important because your average person is not a bandit that kills people all the time and wears a finger necklace. Probably if it works for him, it could probably work for them too. So I think the The story of transformation is a pretty good one. Ah, yes, I see the people that have joined up. It's a pretty interesting story. It's pretty straightforward. If there's any questions about it, though, that's fine. Any questions about the Buddhist perspective or particular things, whatever in particular, now would be the time to ask before we end the live talk. I'll give people a moment to think about that, if they'd like to ask something. I do want to mention how astounding it is, though, that we have this story, and it's so little known, about a disastrous killer who turns into a monk. And the fact that the concept is clear in here, that he's born again into his new noble life. Don't know why this story isn't more popular. Anyway, I'm glad to share it with you today. I see that looks like there's no questions. Thanks for having a listen today. I do hope that the truth will remove delusion in your life the way light removes darkness. And once again, thanks for having a listen.